to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
What is up, you guys? Knuckle Mania 2 taking place live at the Hard Rock Casino in Hollywood, Florida. It's going to be a wild night. You guys know Bare Knuckle FC is labeling this fight card as the biggest card that they've ever put together. Now, that's something you're going to hear from them a lot moving forward. Of course, it's an evolving sport. It's an evolving promotion. They're only getting bigger and better as we move forward. So as far as where the measuring stick was placed last, it's just going to constantly get passed. And I tend to agree with them here. I think this is a very solid fight card. You had the major signing of Mike Perry here, who's taken on Julian Lane. We got some bad blood here. We got the big signing of Chad Mendes, making his BKFC debut, his bare knuckle debut in general there. You got Hart and the tough rematch. That's a big fight there. And then, of course, you got Luis Palomino, a champion, a guy that represents the sport better than anybody. And he's got a tough test in front of him. So I tend to agree this is a very solid card. And this is a card for BKFC that's really solid from top to bottom as we work our way to the very beginning fights of the card. I mean, there's recognizable names now. A lot of these guys have had the opportunity to throw down in the BKFC arena already. You know, towards the beginning of when BKFC started off, you know, a lot of these guys were making their debuts. The sport was so new. It's nice that these guys have a little bit of a track record, and we're seeing how they perform when they knuckle up. We're starting to really get an idea of who these guys are, and I think that this is the biggest event that they've ever put together. So I'm excited for it. We're going to dive into this entire fight card here. We'll brush upon the early fights a little bit quicker, but we're going to go deep into the main card just so you guys know that. So do know that the main card we're going to be dissecting a little more so, and I'll be quick with these early fights here. And with no further ado, let's jump into this fight card. So we take a look at the first fight on the card. We got Howard Davis taking on Dillard Pegg. Howard Davis, please excuse me, guys, for not being able to have this information for you. I think it is a complete coincidence that his name is Howard Davis. At first, I thought maybe there was some type of relation to the great Howard Davis Jr., if you guys remember him. One of the better MMA coaches who's been training over in South Florida, you know, a great boxer. And, you know, when I saw the name and I realized that Howard Davis was from South Florida, I was wondering if there was some kind of relation, but I do not think that there is. If you remember, in his last fight, he came in as a major favorite, went in there, starched Glendale Futrell. I was there for that fight live. And, I mean, this guy, Howard Davis, or this kid, looks to be somebody that really has some promise. And from the limited stuff I was able to pull up on Dillard Pegg, I really don't think Dillard is going to be offering much there. And as I try to pull up a betting line, right now it's very hard to pull up betting lines on this event. But if you go over to Bovada, you can see some of them here. There's a couple fights missing. And we see Howard Davis right now, though, at a minus 1,000. So once again, a giant favorite in this fight. And it seems legit here. Bovada, you know, but they have it. They have him as Joe Pegg here, and on Tapology it says Dillard Pegg. Maybe that's his nickname, Joe. Nevertheless, I think we could expect Howard Davis, with his long frame and his athletic abilities, and it being a guy that's been training boxing for some time, to go in there, probably starch this guy Dillard Pegg. The line's ridiculous, though. I don't really know what you're gonna do with that there. Dennis Cedeno, the Pink Panther, if you guys remember him. We've seen him over in the MMA side of things way back in the day. A guy that has since came over to the bare knuckle scene. In his last fight, he did get a victory over Alan Arzano, and that was a split decision victory for him there. I believe that was his BKFC debut. And like I said, this was a guy we saw over on the MMA side of things back in the day, back in 2015, fighting in the UFC. That didn't really thrive in the octagon. You know, losses to Cody Pfister, Chad Lepre, Kurt Hollabaugh. But it is a solid thing to see a guy with this type of fight experience even going over to the bare knuckle side of things compared to the level of some of the guys over there. I mean, I'll take a guy with this type of experience in the BKFC side of things all day. I mean, there's guys that are really making their combat debuts as professionals. Some of these guys, like I mentioned earlier. So we take a look at his opponent, Mario Vargas. He's 0-3 as a professional mixed martial artist. So if you catch my drift here, this guy's making his bare-knuckled debut. He's a guy that was 0-3 from the MMA side of things. I know it's a little different there. It's the MMA game's overall a little different, but striking is a big part of it, and boxing is a big part of it. This isn't a guy that you see any professional boxing fights on his resume. So, I mean, I've been decently impressed from Cedeno. From what I saw in his last fight as well. And I'm going to take Dennis Cedeno here. But again, these are fights that it's a little hard to get all the information here. There's a limited amount of tape on some of these guys towards the beginning of the card. And I'm going to scroll through this next fight here too. Edgar Plazola taking on Chevy Bridges. This is a fight that I wasn't really able to pull up ample tape on as well. But then we got Ulysses Diaz, Yuli the Monster, a guy that I'm a big fan of, taking on Sawyer Depi. You guys know Yuli has the record for the fastest knockout in combat sports history. Not just boxing, not just MMA. And I'm not trying to take credit for it, but when I saw that fight, I was watching that fight live. I was on the patio chilling, having a couple of drinks. And when I saw that fight live, I instantly knew that was the record. I knew it right away when he knocked out Danile Bonadetto, a guy that was really not fit for that fight. If you guys remember that fight, man, this guy here, 2-2 as a pro mixed martial artist. He went into that fight and he thought that he was signing up for like a cooking class or something. If you guys remember, I mean, he thought everything was just sweet when he was in there, man. He had no urgency in that fight. He had his guard down as soon as the ref set them to go, and you can't do that, especially when you have a killer in front of you like Uli the Monster, who instantly started sparking off. And again, when I saw that fight, there was no doubt that was the record for the fastest knockout in combat sports, because BKFC, they lined them up right in front of each other in the middle of the ring. Uli started sparking off immediately, and what came to mind just instantly was there's no way that there was another combat fight where an opponent knocked out another opponent faster than that. I knew that instantly, and then you saw the broadcast team start to talk about that, which was it was funny watching that all transpire. But Yuli Diaz, also a guy that just went to war against Thiago Alves, a guy that I have great respect for as a combatant, not just in MMA, but his skills are carrying over in a great way over to the BKFC side of things. That was a great fight. Yuli did slow down a little bit, I guess you could say, towards the end of the fight. He started off very strong. He was winning that fight, got broken down a little bit, but Alves is a legend. And then you take a look at his new opponent, Sawyer Depi Diesel. This is a guy that has one BKFC fight under his belt, and he did get a first round knockout there. So I'm interested to see if he could try to hang with Yuli, but you guys know I'm rolling with Yuli here, a guy that I am a big fan of, and we'll see if we could pull up a live line on this fight here. Like I said, not every fight is listed here, and I do not believe that this fight is listed, and it's not. I expect Yuli to be a solid favorite in this fight. We'll see that line unravel to us here in the near future, and you could bet Yuli will be a solid favorite in that fight. Jade Mason Wong taking on Christine Vicens. I don't really have ample information to talk about that fight, but we're going to get some stuff to talk about here in a second. Gustavo Trujillo taking on Steven Townsell. This is a fight, unfortunately, I don't see a live line on right now on Bovada as well. This guy, Gustavo Trujillo, the Cuban assassin, I just had the pleasure to watch him fight live. I was ringside for that fight, and he had a devastating knockout victory. The crowd was going nuts, and that was over Mike Kyle. Mike Kyle, you guys know him, former Strike Force fighter, a big time power puncher on the MMA side of things. In that fight, Trujillo really showed what his boxing ability is about. He's a nasty boxer. We take a look at his resume. Now, he does have some MMA experience, a loss via an armbar. That's not really too relevant now over on the bare knuckle side of things. He's got some victories under his belt, some impressive victories that we're going to talk about here. How about the victory over Lorenzo Hunt, the champion right now, who just recently took out Hector Lombard? That's a big-time victory, knocked him out there in the first round. And then his opponent, Steven Townsell, I believe he's 1-1 on the BKFC side of things, and yes, he is, coming off that first round knockout loss to Jordan Mitchell. I think this is a very tough fight for him. I think that Gustavo is going to be a little bit too big of a platter for him. I don't think he's going to be able to handle it. Yeah, I think he might be able to take a few bites and then he's going to be full. And Gustavo is just going to be feasting. And you already know there's no line on this fight. And initially, when I was looking at the lines, I saw Dennis Cedeno, also a guy that you know as being very proud to be Cuban. I thought for a second that was the Gustavo Trujillo line for a split second, and I was jumping out of my seat, but I quickly remembered that's a different fighter there. If you catch my drift, because I expect the line to be ridiculous on that fight. Gustavo will be a major favorite. He might be over a minus 1,000. He might be like a minus 1,500. It might not even be listed on any of your books, to be quite honest. I think Gustavo is going to be a little bit too much from there. So if you guys catch my drift there, John Michael Escoboza taking on Zion Tomlinson Jr. Don't believe there's any type of line on this fight here as well. Oh, there is. Excuse me here. Yeah, Escobazo comes in right around a minus 175 over Zion Tomlinson. Escobazo, the Dominican fighter, who has been doing his thing on the BKFC side of things. That's 4 fights in a row now. Has been handling some business, some MMA experience as well. And then that is 6 fights in a row. He's 6-0 as a BKFC fighter. So been doing his thing over there. And then you got a guy in Zion Tomlinson Sr., who's only 22 years old. And is coming off a loss against Jared Warren. Before that, he wins 2 fights against Harrison Aiken and Tyler Hill. From the limited amount of film I saw on these guys, I do edge Escobozo. He's right around a minus 175. We'll see how that line goes. But again, these are fights that I'm just briefly brushing upon for you guys here. Francisco Ricci, talented fighter, taking on Jake Bostwick. Now, we know Jake Bostwick, this was a guy that people were very high on and really hasn't delivered. He's a very technical fighter, puts in work at American Top Team, coming off a tough loss to Julian Lane. If you guys remember, they were beefing at the weigh-ins, and Julian Lane really showed up and styled on him in that fight. This was a guy that was actually really heavily touted coming into the BKFC side of things, coming in as a big-time favorite in his fights, but really, I haven't been overly impressed, to be quite honest. Francisco Ricci, a guy that's 1-0, it's 1-0 as a professional mixed martial artist, but 3-0 as a BKFC fighter here, and had that solid victory over Brian Maxwell, a guy that we had the pleasure to watch box Ocho Cinco, I believe it was, right? Yeah, I believe he had that freak fight there. Brian Maxwell, a guy that, he has maybe a little bit of a name from that fight, but has some decent hands. Not really too high in him there. I think that Jake Bostwick, although he hasn't been showing up in a major way, I think he still is a guy that has more potential than Francisco Ricci's past opponents. I think this is a fight that has the potential to play out pretty close. 2 technical fighters. I'm curious to see how this plays out. We'll take a look if we have a line on this fight. And it's pretty much a pick'em. See, interesting. I kind of had this fight capped very evenly in my mind. I was interested to see where this line would be. I'm gonna give Jake Bostwick. You know what? I'm gonna flip that up, man. I was gonna give Bostwick another chance. This is a guy I know that a lot of people rave about him over at ATT. But you know what, Ricci and his fights, I do see a little bit more of a sense of urgency when he's in there. A little bit more confidence in himself. He moves forward a little bit more. So I'm going to take Ricci, actually. I'm going to flip that up on you guys. Almost was ready to take Jake Bostwick. It's an entertaining fight. I'm curious to see how that plays out. But I will favor Ricci. And let me see if I can get some stats on these guys. We don't have a reach here on Ricci. I was interested to see the reach advantage he would have. I think that he will be a little bit more of a rangy fighter in there. But unfortunately, again, it's a little tough sometimes with some of these fights. All right, now we're cooking here, right? We're cooking. These were the 4 fights that I was really excited to talk about with you guys. Britain Hart taking on Christine Fereja, however you want to say that. This is a rematch. If you guys didn't know that, Christine Misfit, she did take out Britain Hart the first time they fought. That was about 3 years ago or so. And that was a fight where it played out a little bit closer towards the beginning, but Christine really started to put it on Britain as the fight started to progress, and ended up busting her eye up, and ended up getting a TKO finish. They had to stop the fight via cut. And Christine was really starting to tee off at one point in time in that fight. Christine is a girl that really has some solid boxing. There's no question about it. I mean, she's definitely been doing it for some time. She's very comfortable with her hands. I'm pretty impressed with her technique. And then you got a fighter in Britain Hart, who is, excuse the verbiage here, but she's a girl that's all heart. She really is, because in her fights, I mean, she's extremely tough. She's not the most technical, but she continues to move forward and pressure her fighters and kind of outwills them. She's extremely tough. If it's a bloody war, I mean, she has no problem with that. Of course, she is the wife of Joey Beltran, a guy that's really had some success on the BKF side of things as well, a former MMA fighter. And as a couple, they've really been doing their thing. And I've really enjoyed watching Britain fight. Just had the pleasure to watch her fight live in her last fight against Pearl Gonzalez. Pearl Gonzalez is a girl that I do hold in high regards for her talent. I know she's a decent wrestler and jiu-jitsu practitioner, but she's got some hands too. And we saw her in her BKFC debut have some real solid success. I think she got a first round knockout or something like that. She looked good, Pearl, but not against Britain Hart. Britain Hart was in her face. It was a war. I will say this, it was a very close fight, and I think it could have went either way, to be quite honest, and the crowd was actually really upset when Pearl didn't win that fight. Pearl had a lot of her family and friends in the arena. They were not happy about the decision. I think the right decision probably was made. Britain Hart was really the aggressor towards the end of that fight, kind of took it, and she's a girl that I enjoy watching, and this is a big opportunity for her, because she has a chance here to get some redemption on a loss that she took. And like we said, she took that loss back in 2019, just about 3 years ago, against Christine Fereja. And keep in mind that she had a really rough start to the beginning of her professional career. Losses, draws. She finally gets in the win column back in 2020, but since then it's been an absolute tear. 5 fights in a row. Like I said, taking out Pearl Gonzalez. The big victory she had against Paige Van Zandt as well. That was a big one for her. Kind of bullied Paige in there. But Paige hasn't really shown to be that successful so far on the BKFC side of things. So I know she has the name and whatnot. Maybe I don't put too much stock into that. Whereas Christine is a girl. She's 1-2 as a professional mixed martial artist. But you take a look at the BKFC fights and the Muay Thai fights. Victory. Took out Rachel Ostovich on the MMA side of things. And then look at this, Jennifer Tate, Britain Hart, and then the 2 victories as of recently, Calista Salgado, she had the 3rd round knockout, and then Kaylee Cutler finished her as well. Her hands look good. I think there's a little bit of an X factor in this fight, and that is the fact that the last time they squared off, Christine was a little bit younger. Christine getting up there in age, she's 39 years old, creeping up on that 40 mark, whereas Britain Hart is 32. She's creeping up towards the prime of her athletic abilities. She's a girl that's getting more and more comfortable in there. She's been very active as a bare knuckle fighter. I'm going to take my girl Hart here in the rematch. I'm going to take her to get some redemption here. I'm a big fan of what she's been doing. I like her personality. Towards the beginning, I thought she was a little awkward, a little strange, but you know what? She's kind of grown on me a little bit. She's a confident girl, and I'm going to take her to win this fight. We'll take a look at the betting line here. And Britain Hart will be a dog here. She's right around a plus 185 underdog with the comeback on Christine at minus 250. So people putting a lot of stock into that first fight and what Christine's been able to do as of recently. I'm still going to roll with my girl Britain Hart here. I love the heart that she showcases in there. I know she's sharpening up her skills fight to fight, and I feel like she's covering more distance over these past couple years, as is Christine. Christine's a girl that's been boxing for a long time, and she's getting up there in age. I think you might start to see her decline a little bit, whereas Britain's more on the up and up. And I'm a fan, so you know what? Why not? Let's take the dog there. There's more value on that line, in my opinion. So that's how I'm handling my pick there. I take Britain Hart. All right, in the next fight, we got Chad Mini Mendes taking on Joshua Alvarez Famez, a guy that's known for his music abilities. This is a guy that makes music and whatnot. He's a little bit more famous, maybe outside of the ring. He's 1-1 as a professional BKFC fighter. Chad Mendes, do I even need to go on about Mendes? You guys know the deal with Mendes, a guy that that's been around the block for a long time. I remember Chad Mendes when he really started to make a name for himself over in MMA. He was undefeated. He was a big-time Team Alpha Male product. He was a freak athlete, really. He's a little bit small, doesn't have the biggest reach, but he was a guy that had big-time wrestling abilities. He was extremely explosive. I remember just watching him, being very excited to see his career progress. Of course, down the line, he had the big fight with Conor McGregor that he took on short notice. One of the more polarizing fights of his career. And unfortunately for him, it didn't go his way. But Chad Mendes seems to be very motivated for this fight. He seems to be in great shape, if I'm being quite honest. There was rumors about him even back in the day. When he was fighting over in MMA, there was rumors about him using supplements and whatnot. I don't want to go too much into that. I like the guy, but I would not be surprised if he was on some serious stuff going into this fight. He's in phenomenal shape, and I don't know exactly what the testing is like over there. And I'm telling you, man, this guy Chad looks to have some real pop on his hands. And see if I can get a better video here. I mean, he's been hitting the mitts and he's been looking nasty. Let's see if I can find something here. There was one video. He must have posted it a while back. But, I mean, look at the shape that he's coming in. I think they'll show it towards the end of this video. I mean, coming in phenomenal shape. Coming out of the cryo machine thing over there. But, listen, Chad Mendes was always a power puncher. Chad Mendes has that wrestling background, but like he said, he's been working on his striking for over 14 years now. He has serious pop on his hands. I think it's going to be a little too much. You're talking about no gloves on his hands. When he hits, there's going to be some serious power coming through on Famez. Famez is a guy that really did not look good in his last fight, and I saw that fight live as well. And this was not that fight because he wasn't looking as happy in the fight that I saw. This was the fight before that. He was victorious there. But Famez was very hesitant in his last fight against Arthur Walcott Cisse. And he came out with the pink hair and was just very hesitant. Came into that fight as a solid favorite. People were respecting his ability after his debut against Johnny Morales, where he went in there and starched him. Morales was a guy that was making his debut as a professional and had no track record and wasn't on the level. This is a completely different fight here. We're talking about Chad Mendes, a guy that, again, is a real professional here. A guy that's been around the block. He's a real competitor. You got to side with Chad Mendes here. You got to side with Chad Mendes to win this fight and most likely by finish. How about that? Chad Mendes coming into this fight as a minus 500 favorite at the moment. I think there's real potential for Money Mendes. I know I called him Mini earlier, but we got to pay some respect here. Money Mendes to go in there and starch Famez. I think there's some real ability there. Or Famez will really be on the back foot running away and will be a guy that's not going to get his hand raised, in my opinion, in this fight. That's kind of how I look at it. I was not impressed with his performance in his last fight, so going in on him a little bit, but calling it for how I see it. Chad Mendes is definitely the pick, and if you're able to get some type of prop bet on a finish for Mendes, would not be surprised. I mean, we're looking at a little Mike Tyson here and Chad Mendes, all right? And that will take us to the co-main event. Mike Platinum Perry taking out Julian Lane. Now, I had the pleasure of bumping into Julian Lane and actually chilling with him for a bit at that last event. That was the Hector Lombard versus Lorenzo Hunt fight card, if you guys remember that took place in Miami, BKFC 22. I had the pleasure of meeting Julian Lane, and I know he looks a little serious in this picture, but by no means was he that type of guy. This guy was extremely laid back, very friendly. I was kicking it with him for a bit. He had his chick with him, didn't care. We were just posted up with them, drinking. I said what's up to him real quick, and he was just like, hey, man, if you guys want to chill, come chill. We were taking multiple pictures, kicking the bullshit, and he's a really down-to-earth, cool dude. He really is. We know he has that stigma, from the Let Me Bang, being all drunk on the show, but I'm telling you guys right now, he's a chill dude. And if you saw the promo for this fight, the countdown of this fight, you saw a little bit of an inside look into Julian Lane and his personal life. They showed his dad, his mom, and all that. I'm telling you, they're good people. They're good people. He's a good dude. This isn't some crazy type of dude that's what I mean, like kind of like a dirtbag. He's not that type of guy at all. He's just he likes to fight. He's a wild dude, but he's a guy that has respect, and I felt it firsthand by the way his encounter was with me. I'm telling you guys, I'm not just saying that just to say it. I never really was a giant fan of Julian Lane before that. I knew of him. But when I got a chance to meet him, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be rooting him on moving forward. And besides that, from a fighting standpoint, he's a guy that's always brought the fight. And especially when you take a look into his bare knuckle fights, he's had some tough fights, but he brings it. He does bring it. His fight against Thiago Alves, you guys know, I said it earlier, I'm very high in Alves as a striker and as a fighter. And that was a fight that he went to split decision there. Believe he may have even took that fight on somewhat of a short notice. Came off a victory after that against Jake Boswick. We talked about him earlier. Took out... and real quick, and the Boswick fight was a big one at the time. Like I said, Boswick had a lot of momentum. People were high on him coming out of American Top Team. People had high praises for him, and they went at it at the weigh-ins and whatnot, and Julian Lane showed up. He really showed up in that fight. He was extremely tough, and then he takes the loss against David Rickles. David Rickles, ex-Bellator guy, lost to Jim Ehlers. Jim Ehlers, a guy that's very skilled on these side of things. So he's had some tough fights, but he's been in there with notable names. And now he's got a big name in front of him. His plate is full here with Mike Perry. Mike Perry, a guy that, he's another guy that people look at, and it's kind of like a show or whatnot with Mike Perry, right? He's a guy that's kind of made a name for himself, not just with his fighting skills, but a guy that's a little bit of a polarizing figure outside of the octagon, or was outside of the octagon back then. And to be honest, he's definitely chilled out over the last couple years. I think he lost a little bit of that wildness. He's had a kid now. He's getting older. Maybe the test is dropping a little bit because he used to be a wild bull. But, obviously he still has that in him, but hopefully he's not, punching old men at restaurants anymore like he was a few years ago. But all jokes aside, Mike Perry's a guy that really puts in the grind with his striking especially. I've been seeing him put in work with his boxing for years. He's a little bit underrated in that aspect, in my opinion. Definitely has some serious power. We've seen him put guys out for years over on the MMA side of things, and in diverse ways. He really improvises. We've seen him hit guys with elbows. If you remember the Ellenberger knockout. As far as his toughness goes, it's up there at the top of the game. It's up there at the top of the combat sports game. I truly mean that. Mike Perry, we've seen him in fights where his nose was hanging off the side of his face. Against Vicente Luque, one of the top fighters in the division, still hanging tough, getting takedowns. He's extremely tough. He's really a bull. Has a granite chin. A lot of these things, in my opinion, are going to carry over to the BKFC side of things. I really believe that. A lot of his skills and his skill set's really, really going to translate perfect over to the BKFC side of things. I really do believe that. So, this is a tough fight here. Like I said, I want to be rooting on Julian Lane and all his fights moving forward. Was able to meet him and all that, and I really became a fan of him. I think that this is a tough fight for Julian Lane. I think anything could happen here. I think anything could happen in this fight. There's no gloves. These guys have beef. They have the issues that they've been going through. They had that little scrap at the event that took place in Tampa. There's some bad blood. We saw them at the press conference yesterday. Mike Perry pulled out the extendable bat and like a clown and tried to reach over. I think they're going to really go at it. And I really think whoever lands a big shot is going to be the guy that prevails here. If I'm being quite honest, I think that Mike Perry is going to impress. I do. I think that he has, like I said, some solid boxing skills. He's sharp with his defense. He's extremely tough. He could take a shot. And this is a fight that's really going to it's really going to play out in an exciting way, in my opinion. At the end of the day, if I'm being honest, I think that Mike Perry is going to be successful in his debut. I will be rooting on my boy Julian Lane. Hopefully, if he's listening, doesn't get mad. I picked Perry here, but I'm just being honest from my assessment here. But Julian Lane is a guy that's very, very capable to put anybody out. Has serious power. Is extremely tough as well. And we talked about the extendable bat. Here it goes. Pulls it out of his armpit. Skloop. So, I got to slightly edge Mike Perry in this fight, if I'm being honest. And we take a look at the line. Perry is coming into this fight as a pretty hefty favorite here, minus 325. The comeback on Julian Lane right around plus 230. So, people tend to be in agreement. People respect the ability that Perry has. This is going to be a fun fight. I ain't missing it. I'm going to be locked in. I'll be rooting on my boy. Let me bang here. But, Perry's is a fun guy to watch too. I slightly edge Perry to take this fight. All right, so now we're going to slide up to the main event, at least at the moment, unless they swap the position of these fights, I wouldn't be surprised, because they really advertised Perry and Lane at the press conference as it was the favorite. But then you got the champion Luis Palomino taking on Martin Brown, listed here as the main event, which I would have no problem with. Giant fan of Luis Palomino's, an awesome dude. A real class act, a guy that really represents the sport in a major way. As far as his abilities go, represents with his abilities like no other. I mean, he really is. He really is the pinnacle of the bare knuckle fighting scene right now. He's the pinnacle. We're talking about, since he's made his debut, coming over from the MMA side of things, where he has a world of experience. We're talking about 5 fights in a row, and we're talking about legit victories, taking out guys like Isaac Valley Flag, the old Jackson Wink product, knocking him out in the first round, finishing Jim Ehlers in the first round, looked phenomenal there. Outpointed Tyler Goodjohn, a very talented European champion, and then the big victory over Dat Win. Dat Win is a very talented fighter as well. There was bad blood there. He looked very good in that fight. Saw that fight live as well. Now he's got Martin Brown in front of him. This guy Brown's a solid fighter as well. Has some MMA experience under his belt. From the BKFC side of things, he is 3-0, so doing his thing as well. In my opinion, a little bit less of a little bit lower level of opponents that he's taken out. Zach Zane, Juan Pina, and Bobby Taylor. I'm not as high on those guys as some of the guys that Palomino has been in there with. So I want to be clear about that. But there's no question that Brown does have some real abilities. He's an athletic guy. His punches are a little bit more loopy, in my opinion, if I'm being honest, as he's trying to get Palomino here. I know Palomino wasn't happy about this one. Talked about it at the press conference, but he's a little bit more loopy, is Brown, in my opinion, with his hands. And I know he's a solid boxer. He likes to use the Philly shell style very much in his fights, which does work for him. But when he starts to go in, his punches really come, from out east and west. Whereas Luis Palomino is a guy that has shown to be very, very polished up with his technique, with his hands. I've been very, very impressed with his head movement, how tight his defense is. Palomino is no joke. I'm letting you guys know that right now. He's the reigning champ for a reason. X factors here that you got to remember. Luis Palomino was coming off COVID going in to that last fight against Win, and he showed up in a major way. But before that fight, he lost like 30 pounds. He was really hurting, and he came back and took that fight against that Win, and he looked good. And he's saying that you're going to see the best version of himself going into this fight. And I have no reason to doubt him. Again, I'm very high on Luis Palomino. We'll take a look at the betting line here. I'm letting you know right now I do have Luis Palomino to win the fight, regardless of what this betting line says. I do believe he's a very slight dog here. Very slight dog, -105 with the comeback on Martin Brown at -125. So people, respecting Brown as well. But Palomino is going to be my pick there. I think he's more polished, like I said, with his defense, throws his punches a little bit more straight. He's a workhorse. He has a granite chin. He has all that, and he's a guy that you, if you back him up, you're not going to regret it. I'll tell you that much. So that's going to be my pick there. And again, here's the fight card. No betting lines posted here, but BKFC will also have the lines all posted here for us to take a look at tomorrow as well. I'm excited for this fight card. I'm very, very excited for this fight card. You guys know I have become a very big fan of BKFC. Now, please do go hit me up with a follow on IG, MMA Fortune Teller _. Catch me on Twitter, the MMA Teller. I appreciate you guys showing love and support. Like this video, subscribe, and you guys know the new routine. I got to leave you guys with a fun fact here. I thought this one was pretty cool. Let me know if you guys already knew this or not. You can comment below. But the circulatory system is more than 60,000 miles long. We're talking about your veins and arteries. If a child's entire circulatory system, we're talking veins, arteries, capillaries, were laid out flat, it would stretch out for more than 60,000 miles, according to the Franklin Institute. By the time we reach adulthood, our bodies have become more home to approximately 100,000 miles of blood vessels. That's just one of the mind-blowing facts that sound made up but aren't. I don't really know what that last sentence means, but you guys catch the gist of what I'm saying. That's pretty crazy. So if you ever take somebody apart and string out all their arteries, you can get it to go for a long, long distance. But I don't recommend you do that. But you guys, I'm going to wrap up the show here. I hope you guys Obviously, if you watch the video this long, you're obviously a fan of BKFC, so shout out to you. I can relate to you there. I know some people, which you probably wouldn't be listening right now, are not the biggest fans of the sport, and you guys want to see more MMA-related content. If that's the case, then you're obviously not watching this video. And if somehow you got stuck watching this video, even when you didn't want to watch it, do yourself a favor and have a little bit more control of your body and hit the X button and go watch another video. But again, shout out to everybody that's rocking with this BKFC stuff. I love it. I love what Mr. Feldman's doing out there. And honestly, I'd love to be a part of it, and that's something I'm working on too. I'd love to have a part in what's going on at BKFC, because I think they're really going to go to the top, and I enjoy the sport. All right, guys. On that note, signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.